Everyone's been asking for an update on our fall brassicas that we planted a month or so ago, and we like to give the people what they want. So here we go. If this is your first time on our channel, welcome. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button below and that bell button so you get notified every time we come out with a new video. If you're a frequent viewer of our channel, it's always good to have you back. So this here is the first plot of brassicas that we planted for fall. In our dream garden here, we planted this back when it was still pretty warm and had to kind of baby these guys along. We've got kale, lacinato kale, tiger collards. We've got green magic broccoli and some white cauliflower on the end, the snowball variety. Let's take a look and see how each individual crop is doing. So first off here, we've got our tiger collards, and if you look down there at those stalks, you can see where they've already been stripped. We've already harvested these guys 2 or 3 times, and they just keep growing and growing. Like I said, one of the most productive crops you can grow in the garden. We haven't really had any worm issues. We've been keeping them sprayed at least once a week with a rotation of BT and spinosad, and so we hadn't had any really worm issues, and they're just looking really good. Now, you'll see this a couple times over again as we go through these plots. I've got some of these random kind of, I don't know what to call them. I call them hot spots, where I just didn't have very good luck with my transplants. It's not a huge space. If we back up here, we can see. But just about 3 or 4 plants there just didn't take. And all I can figure is maybe I just got too much of my manure in there and didn't get it tilled in good enough in that spot, but just didn't grow well in that spot there. But that's why we plant several rows, and we got plenty of collards. But I'll show you another couple spots here in a little bit where we just didn't get anything to grow. It's kind of unusual, but too much compost or too much manure is all I can figure. Secondly, here we've got our lacinato kale, and you can see where we've been harvesting that as well. We've already harvested this once or twice, and of all the things we planted in this crop, the one thing that all the transplants took really well was this lacinato kale. We didn't really lose any plants with this stuff, so this stuff grows really well once transplanted, and just been really happy as always with the production on this. We've got some nice big leaves on some of these guys, and as long as we keep plucking it and harvesting it, these will grow on up and get 3 foot tall, 4 foot tall, sometimes even 5 foot tall. Just a really productive crop for the winter and fall garden. And when it gets cool like it's supposed to be tonight, some good old kale soup will warm your soul. Moving along in this plot, the next thing we've got is our green magic broccoli here. And we've got some nice big plants here, nice big leaves. No broccoli heads or florets forming yet, but it won't be long. But anytime you got really big plants, usually that translates into some really nice broccoli heads. Now, here's another one of those kind of hot spots I was telling you about, where we just had a few plants that just didn't take. Kind of strange to me, but just happened. And for some reason these spots don't seem to drain very well either. So it could be a combination of maybe too much manure and just bad draining spot. I may need to come in here and amend this with some finer soil, some pot and mix or something, sand, something other to get it draining better. But for the most part, we've got a good stand of broccoli. We just got a little skip spot here. Now, a lot of people have been asking, with the cold temperatures on broccoli and stuff, how will they handle it? The plants will handle freezing temps fine, but if you've got heads starting to form down here, you definitely don't want to let those get frozen, because they'll just turn to mush. So it's kind of a tricky proposition where your plants will do fine throughout some frost and freezing temps, But if you've got crowns forming and then freezing temps coming along, you either need to harvest what you got or cover them up. Use some row cover or something like that, because last thing you want is to come out the next morning and all your broccoli heads just be turned to mush. And then lastly, we've got our white snowball cauliflower here. And some of these are just starting to wrap down there. We don't have any cauliflower heads yet, but it shouldn't be long. And these plants are looking nice and big as well. Same thing with the broccoli. Big cauliflower plants usually mean big cauliflower heads. And same thing with the freeze. The plants can take it, but those heads can't. So if once we get these heads forming on these guys, we want to be careful and watch out for those freezing temperatures, because we don't want those heads getting mushy due to a freeze. So we either cover them or just harvest what we got before that freeze comes. Alright, so that was plot number 1 that we planted. And then the second plot we planted is right here, right behind it. Well, we've got some green cabbage, some red cabbage, some more kale, some of the kind of frilly leaf kale, blue night kale. We've got rutabagas, and we've got purple cauliflower on the end. So let's see how each of these are doing. So starting off with my green cabbage here, and of all the fall brassicas I've planted, these are the ones I'm probably most proud of. This is a variety of green cabbage called Cheers, and man, these plants are huge. I haven't grown cabbage in a couple years just because I didn't have room, but with my new dream garden, I've got plenty of room, and I've got 4 rows of it planted. And look at those leaves right there. I don't know if you can tell how big they are, but you can look at them compared to little Tiger there, and they're a lot bigger than he is. So these things are kind of just starting to wrap and form a head there. But if those big outside leaves are any indication, we're going to have some huge heads of cabbage. Now, they're not all the same size. These right here are a little bigger than some of the rest of them. I've got a few here that not quite as big as the others, but that's okay, because that will just help us lengthen our harvest window, so we can harvest the big ones first and then kind of get the little ones as they come along. We don't have to get in here and harvest them all at the same time, so that's not a problem. But really looking forward to seeing how big these guys get. And like I said, I'm just really happy with this Cheers variety. Best looking cabbage I've ever grown. And then we've got our red cabbage here, and this is a variety called Rio Grande. And some of those there are just kind of creeping along, but if we walk down the road this way, we've got some pretty dang good ones. And those are pretty big. Those are about the same size as some of those Cheers cabbages over there. These Rio Grande red cabbage heads are supposed to be really big. Some of the biggest red cabbage out there. So just like with the green cabbage, it'll be alright if they don't all be the same size. We'll have a longer harvesting window. And the good thing about growing these this time of year is, with almost anything in the fall garden, your harvest window is extended, because you don't have to worry about things bolting because the temperatures are cooling. So you can take your time picking everything and just pick it as you need it, as you want it. You don't have to worry about picking it and putting it all up at one time. And the third crop in this garden here is our blue night kale. And this stuff is absolutely beautiful there. This is the kind of kale, does great in soups, but it's also really good kale to make a kale salad and just eat raw. Has a really nice texture on it. And I've grown this style of kale before. I've never grown this blue night variety, which is an improved variety. And I can tell you, I'm a big fan already. I really like this blue night kale here. Now if we look over here, we've got us another one of those little hot spots, just kind of randomly in the middle of these plots, where we didn't have about 4 plants there. Just didn't take. But the rest of this kale is looking pretty good. So I'll show you the difference between harvested and what hadn't been harvested. So These guys here, I came in here and harvested yesterday. So that's why those stalks look bare on the bottom. We leave a few leaves on top. And then these guys haven't been harvested yet, but will be harvested soon. So this is what they look like when they're really full, ready to be harvested. And then we leave them like this. Gotta leave a few leaves on the top so them plants can continue to photosynthesize. And just like the lacinato kale, these things get 3 or 4 foot tall come spring. And then we've got our rutabagas. And if you saw our most recent episode of our row by row garden show, we were talking about eating these rutabaga greens. And I've been harvesting these guys. We can see some over here that are, I've already harvested these one time, but I can probably harvest them again. Those leaves get really, really big. And you can harvest the leaves off just 2 or 3 plants and have you a nice mess of greens. So I picked these greens yesterday, and just like with the kale, I just been leaving a few leaves on the top there. Now we are getting some roots starting to form there, and I've never grown rutabagas before, so I've just been really interested to see, watching this, how these plants progress. Now these roots here look a little bit kind of elongated initially, and I don't know if that's normal or not. So if you're an experienced rutabaga grower area, you can tell me, do those start to get more round, or did I do something wrong with them looking elongated like that? Guess we'll just have to see. But if you got experience with that, definitely put something in the comments below and let me know. As far as our market farming operation goes, I just kind of feel silly that I haven't been growing rutabagas all these years. With these greens here that just keep making while those roots are slowly getting bigger, man, this is a super productive crop to grow in the garden, because you're getting those greens off of it, and then once those roots get bigger, we'll have another item that we can harvest off these. And just so, as far as the sheer biomass of produce that we get, I should have been growing rutabagas a long time ago, but I'm hooked now, and these will be a staple of my cool weather garden for years to come. And the last crop in this plot is our purple cauliflower. This is a variety called Graffiti, and you can always tell it's purple cauliflower because the stems down there on the kind of inside of the plant, and those inside leaves will have a kind of purplish tinge to them. Now these plants are looking really good. Couldn't be happier with how these look. We didn't really lose any of these. All these took really well. Still don't have any heads, but it shouldn't be long before they start wrapping. This purple cauliflower has a longer maturity date than your standard white cauliflower. It takes a little longer. You just have to be patient with this, but when it does produce, those purple heads are beautiful, and they're pretty tasty, and they're really good for you. So with the exception of those couple hot spots there, those plots are doing really, really well. We've already been harvesting a lot of stuff from there, and still have a lot of crops to harvest there with our cabbage, waiting on the rutabagas to get bigger, and of course the broccoli and the cauliflower. So 2 pretty dang good plots. Now I want to show you one that's not doing so well. So this is our 3rd plot we planted, and this one is the one that is just doing okay, or a little less than okay. As you'll see here in a minute, you can see with that row of flowers there, a lot of the plants didn't make it. And then we walk down the line here, you can see on the far end of the garden there, things look pretty good, but on my end here where I'm standing, things don't look very good at all. And I know exactly what happened here once I started thinking about it. So once I incorporated, or was incorporating, that chicken manure compost in here, I tilled it in one time, and I was going to till it in one more time, just because this area right here is just kind of sticky, the soil is, and it just needed to be tilled one more time. So I was tilling it from left to right instead of up and down as you see it. And about halfway along there, old Troy run out of gas and broke down on me, and I couldn't get him cranked back up. So I was a few days without a tiller there, and I didn't get to till this bottom half here. And I've since tilled it as I'm going to replant some of this stuff, but it just created this area that this wouldn't drain. It was almost kind of, I don't know, anoxic. It just, plants wouldn't grow in it. It was too much manure and just not tilled in good enough. Anyway, we've since come in here and incorporated it a lot better, but that's the reason why some of this stuff on this end just didn't grow well. But if you look there on the far end, it's looking pretty good. Now I've came in and replanted a few things, and still going to replant some stuff here. But lesson learned there, to get that chicken manure compost tilled in really well, or else we'll have some of them hot spots where stuff just won't grow. So let's talk about each row individually and what we've got here, what we're able to salvage and what we had to scrap. So first row here is where we planted our calendula, our cool weather flowers, and several of these are looking pretty good, like that guy there. But then we've got a section where lost a lot of them, and then we come down here and we've got some more that look pretty good. And if I would have had something else to plant here, I might would have scrapped this, but I've never really grown these before. I'm really interested to see how they look and how they do. We can see a little bloom head forming there, so just kind of been patient with these guys. Yeah, it's not ideal to have half the row gone, but we'll wait and see what we get here, just as a trial, growing these things to see if I want to grow them again in the future. The plants that did make it look really, but the plants that didn't make it look really, really nice. So in an ideal situation, probably be a great cool weather flower crop. Now over here to our beets. We got 3 double rows of beets. The first one here we've got Early Wonder Tall Top, then we've got Kestrel, and then we've got our Touchstone Gold beets there. Now this is really interesting to me, what happened here. So this first row here, the Early Wonder Tall Top, which is a great variety, I've grown it for many, many years, just didn't do well in this plot here. I mean, they're making it, they're creeping along, but they should be a lot bigger than that. On the other hand, this Kestrel variety here looks absolutely fantastic. Nice big old leaves on it. It may be too dark, but you can see there maybe we got beet roots already forming. A lot of those are the size of a quarter or $1/2. All of those transplants made it, and they just look really good. The Early Wonder, for some reason, didn't do as well in this plot. And then the Touchstone Gold looks like some of the other stuff in here, where on this side of the garden it doesn't look that great. But if we go down here towards the end, we've got some nice looking plants. So you know, we'll be able to salvage a good amount of beets from here, but a lesson learned, you know, I'm pretty sure I know what caused this down here, so be able to hopefully prevent that from happening in the future. Another good lesson here is that this Kestrel variety is just absolutely awesome. Now this empty space right here is where I think I had some Brussels sprouts, some green Brussels sprouts that just didn't make it. They just didn't take very well. And so I took the tiller in there and tilled them up, and I've got some bok choy transplants. I'm going to throw a double row in there probably this afternoon. Here's another row of green Brussels sprouts. These did a little bit better. That plant there looks really good, and then we've got some that look pretty bad, and then down the end of the row they look pretty good. What's crazy is that these red Brussels sprouts right here, this Red Bull variety, looks really, really good. Almost all those plants made it, and these really like those kind of over fertile conditions, which I guess I've got in here where I didn't get it tilled in good. But all the Red Bull Brussels sprouts did really well. We've got at least a half a row on the green ones we can salvage, which would be nice. And then we've got kohlrabi, just like with some of the other stuff. This side of the row looks fantastic, where I got that stuff tilled in good. This side of the row looks barren. or I didn't get it tilled in good. And I had to ditch one row of kohlrabi, and I came in here yesterday and planted 2 rows of this Savoy cabbage, and I made sure to till it in good before I planted that. So that should do pretty well. And then lastly, we've got some purple kohlrabi, and that did okay for the most part. Down here at the end, we've got a few that we lost, but this purple kohlrabi is starting to bulb here. Got some nice leaves on it, and we can see in there we're starting to get a little bit of bulb formation. So it won't be long before these guys are ready. We'll wait till they get about tennis ball size or so before we cut those. So when we have failures in the vegetable garden, like we had a couple on that last plot I showed you, it's okay. It's going to happen. Even when you're a really experienced gardener, if you've been doing this for 50 years, you're still going to have some failures from one year to the next. The one thing to make sure you do is when you do have failures, try to learn from them. Try to figure out why that happened and try not to do it again. So in this case, I know I probably put a little too much manure down there. Another thing was I was loading it in the wheelbarrow, dumping it, spreading out with a rake. I don't think that's the way to go. I think grabbing a shovel and kind of just slinging it across the plot is better. I think those hot spots may be where I dumped the wheelbarrow and I didn't get it spread out enough. So kind of learn from there. Don't just dump it in there, spread it out a little more evenly and get it tilled in nicely. You know, I know the no-till army likes to come after me sometimes when I talk about tilling the soil, but you know, that's a good indication right there. If we don't till that soil, it just doesn't drain, doesn't have good aeration, and stuff just doesn't grow in it. You can see drastically the difference, one half versus the other half that was tilled twice versus the one that was only tilled once. So in our case there, tilling was very necessary just to get some drainage and airflow into that soil. So I hope you enjoyed that kind of midterm report on our fall brassicas. We'll have to do another update when some of these crops like the cabbage, the broccoli, the cauliflower get closer to completion and we get ready to harvest those. If you're interested in any of the varieties that we talked about in this video, we have all of those on our seeds page. I'll put a link to that below so you can go check that out. If you enjoyed this video, give us a big like, give us a big thumbs up, give us a big share, and we will see you guys next time.